It's only the third month of the year, but there is so much positives to warm our hearts. So let's count down on the top 5 positives of this month. Here are the top 5 positive news stories of March 2021. Before we begin, please show us some love by liking our video, subscribing to our channel and hitting the bell icon to receive notifications for upcoming positive listicle videos. Number 5. Bangladesh's first transgender news anchor goes on air. To cheers from colleagues, Bangladesh's first transgender news anchor breaks down in tears, but only after a word-perfect debut was beamed to the nation and the cameras were off. Tashnovi Anand Shishir, a rights activist who previously worked with NGOs supporting transgender people and migrants, read a first 3-minute daily news bulletin for a private television channel on 8th March, which is International Women's Day. This could be revolutionary and create a new dimension in people's thinking, said Shishir, who received several weeks of intensive training at Boishaki TV after being selected for the job in auditions. The LGBT community faces widespread discrimination in the South Asian country, with a colonial-era law still in place punishing gay sex with prison, though enforcement is rare. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government has since 2013 allowed trans people to identify as a separate gender. In 2018, they were allowed to register to vote as a third gender. Shishir's broadcast on 8th March coincided with International Women's Day and follows a series of steps by public and private firms to overcome deep-rooted prejudices against the community. Number 4. Embarrassed student hid bad haircut under a hat, then the principal gave him a great new one. Teachable moments don't always happen in school, and when they do, it's not necessarily in the classroom. This week, one educator is being lauded for his ability to look beyond the rules to impart one of life's larger lessons. When student Anthony Moore showed up to class wearing a hat in violation of the school's dress code, Stony Brook Intermediate and Middle School Principal Jason Smith knew something was wrong. Eventually, he was able to get Moore to open up. At about 30 minutes, the youth finally explained he was embarrassed by the bad haircut he'd recently received. Understanding the foibles of peer pressure all too well, rather than simply dismiss Moore's concerns and met out disciplinary action, in a stroke of sheer genius, Smith came up with an alternative solution. He'd fix the cruel cut himself. It wasn't just an idle offer. Smith's been cutting hair since he was a teen. After showing more photographic evidence of some of the do's he'd done, the young man agreed to the compromise. So braving the winter snows, Smith drove home to get his gear and then headed back to realign Moore's wayward hairline. Moore willingly submitted to Smith's barbering skills and was pleased enough with the results to return to class, sans hat, where he was able to finish out his school day in good spirits. Moore's mom, who'd okayed the impromptu haircut, was grateful that instead of going to the book and simply suspending her son, Smith chose to seize an opportunity to help the young man feel better about himself. While it's a question without easy answers, being able to recognize it when it's being asked, as well as being willing to take the initiative to transform a minor transgression into a teachable moment, is what makes educators like Smith a cut above the rest. Number 3. French freerunners are using parkour as an eco-friendly gesture to fight light pollution. The Champs-Élysées may be empty with a strict pandemic curfew in place across France, but the shops have been leaving their signs on all the same. And so a few months ago, a parkour collective decided to take matters into its own hands, with members using their gymnastic abilities to climb walls and scaffolding to turn off the illuminated signs. Is just one of a number of parkour collectives around France trying to raise awareness about light pollution and energy consumption as part of the Lights Off movement. Leaving commercial lights on at night wastes energy and the accompanying light pollution harms local ecosystems, which is why parkour collective can be found hanging from ledges and perched atop doorways on the Champs-Élysées most Friday nights. The Lights Off movement is trying to fight light pollution one store sign at a time. Number 2. 10 years after Fukushima nuclear disaster, two men are still living there taking care of everyone's pets. When clouds of radiation began streaming into the air around the Fukushima nuclear plant, 160,000 residents were told to simply cut and run. However, it seems only 159,998 residents listened. The other two, Naoto Matsumura and Sake Kato, remained. Evidently, the city possessed not one, but two men whose love of animals cracked through the innate sense of self-preservation, men who would give up everything rather than consigning others' beings to starvation. Living within the 12.5-mile exclusion zone around the damaged reactor, the two men, unrelated to one another, both living alone while taking care of dozens of stray animals that were left behind when the evacuation order was given. 57-year-old Kato has 41 cats who live with him in his home in the mountains, along with a stray dog he adopted named Pochi. Kato says he will remain with his cats and ensure they are comfortable all through their lives. Kato's generosity isn't restricted to his own animals, and he has taken to feeding local wild boars considered pests by the government. Matsumura left the city at first, but returned shortly after for his own animals. Once he returned, the now 55-year-old realized that everyone else's pets and livestock was still there. So he began taking care of a broad community of animals, including pigs, cats, dogs, ponies, ostriches, and cows. He funds the feeding of the animals through local donations and keeps people up to date with news on his blog, posted by using solar power, though he lives without steady electricity or running water. Everything both Kato and Matsumura are doing is technically illegal, and police have ordered them both to leave the area. Yet they seemingly couldn't be less bothered by the government's demands, and both plan to stay there with the animals come what may. Number 1. Teen collects 30,000 pairs of shoes to donate dignity to LA homeless. For children raised in the Jewish faith, a bar or bar mitzvah is the celebration of the symbolic passage into adulthood. While at age 13 we are not truly grown up, we can begin to see our place in the larger world. What Lindsay Sobel saw in the months leading to her own bar mitzvah was that a life of privilege wasn't a blessing that everyone shared, and she was determined to do something about it. As she became increasingly aware of the day-to-day hurdles homeless people living on the streets of Los Angeles faced, one thing Sobel saw time and again was how many lacked proper footwear. For her Tikkun Olam, an act of repairing the world central to the bar mitzvah ceremony, Sobel came up with the idea to launch Shoes for Souls, a charitable outreach program that collects and distributes shoes for Southern Californians in need. Since its inception, Shoes for Souls has rehomed 30,000 plus pairs of gently used shoes collected during school shoe drives and from shoutouts to her fellow volleyball players and their families. Sobel's mission to help people who are down at heel put their best foot forward is obviously something she believes in heart and soul. While she has received numerous accolades for her efforts, seeing the impact the act of repairing the world has had on a community has been its own reward. Multiply the positivity by sharing these sweet stories with your friends on social media. Like, subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notifications for upcoming Positive Listicle videos.